Hey there everybody, my name is Kat Bowser. I'm your resident fantasy therapist. Welcome back to my channel. Those of you here for the first time, welcome. My name is Kat Bowser. I'm a licensed therapist. I'm also a writer working my first two novels, one the start of a series, one a standalone. And on my channel I like to talk about what I consider to be the heart of writing. That's the characters. The heart of the characters is their psychology. So that's the angle I like to take with pretty much everything I talk about on my channel. So today we are continuing what I have dubbed my week of fire because we are celebrating Michele Quirke's debut novel release. It comes out tomorrow on ebook and you can get it now on paperback, Fires of Treason. I will, as always, leave a link below so you guys can go pick up a copy if you so choose. So this week I've basically been taking topics that came up in the book. I was lucky enough to get an ARC copy that made me think, and I thought they would be fun to talk about. So that being said, today I wanted to touch on flawed but likable characters. So this is actually a topic that I think is pretty important. I think it's become more important as of late because there is this strive to create more realistic characters. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think that's a good thing. I think the more realistic you can make your characters, obviously the better. However, there is a downside, and that is, I think, unfortunately, people have associated deeply flawed with realistic. And while one may be the other, not always. So in other words, you can have a realistic character that does not have tons and tons and tons of flaws. And the reason I bring this up is because I think there are like two extremes in writing. There is the character that has no flaws and is perfect, and usually people find extremely annoying. You'll probably sometimes hear them called a Mary Sue or a Gary Stu. Or you have the character that is so deeply flawed that nobody likes them. And I think obviously what you want to aim for is somewhere in the middle, because I think both extremes are a bad thing, because both extremes do something that as a writer I don't think you ever want to do unless it's on purpose, and that's make someone hate your character. I'm trying to think of a way to phrase this. Okay, so I'll use A Song of Ice and Fire as an example here. So I've read it. I think it has its merits. My big issue is that some of the characters are so deeply flawed, I don't like following them. And I don't like them. And some people make the argument, well, you're not supposed to like all your characters. That's true. There are definitely some characters that writers purposely create to be unlikable. But I do think that if you have a main character that is entirely unlikable, that's a problem. Because most of the time, your reader doesn't, if they either want the character dead because they can't stand them, or they don't care what happens to them. And either one of those is not a good outcome. So how do we hit that sweet spot between too deeply flawed and too perfect? I want to use Elizabeth as an example here from Fires of Treason by Michele, because Elizabeth is one of those characters that has realistic flaws. She does and says things sometimes that you don't like and you don't agree with, but you can see why she does it. And you can also kind of step in her shoes so that you see the world through her lens. And I think that is really the key to making a character flawed but likable, in that you kind of have to be able to put the reader in their shoes. So like I said with all my stuff, I'm not going to give you guys any spoilers from Fires of Treason because I really think you guys need to go read it. But I can use this for an example. So Elizabeth is a princess. She was raised a princess. And when her brother is sent to exile and she follows, she now essentially finds herself in a survival situation. She is no longer pampered. She is no longer tended to right and left. And it's a hard adjustment, which is realistic. I think a lot of times stories would take the angle of, well, she's with her brother, it's a noble cause, you know, so she's gonna adjust, she's gonna be fine. Adjustment is not an overnight thing. It's something that takes time, and people do tend to fall back and think about their previous life and what they gave up and things like that. And sometimes we say things we don't mean. We say things out of frustration, we say things out of anger. And I like that is in this book, because that is a realistic reaction to this kind of situation. And I don't think I would have liked her as much if we didn't get to see that, because I see why she's doing all these things and I see why it's important to her. But I also see her reaction to the very reality of the situation, which is, okay, I'm not always gonna have food now. I don't have all these fancy dresses and things I used to have. I don't have all these hobbies and stuff that used to be in my beck and call, and I don't like it. And that's why I really like Elizabeth, because she's flawed but likable, because I can step into her shoes. Even though it's not a situation I've ever been in, adjustment is something I've experienced. And this is something that I think is really important if you're trying to get your readers empathy, and that is introducing characters who are in a situation that on some level the reader can relate to. And this is actually a trick we use in therapy too, because, you know, let's face it, sometimes I'm going to counsel people that have been through things that I absolutely have not been through, that have had to survive things I absolutely have not had to deal with. And so most of the time the connecting factor is emotion. So while I don't know what it's like to be cast into the wilderness and have to survive, I know how it feels to be scared. I know how it feels to be alone. I know how it feels to be angry at a situation. I know how it feels to think the world is against you and this is unfair. Emotion, I understand. And so even though Elizabeth's situation is not one that I've been in, her emotions are ones I have definitely been in. And like I said, I really think that is the key to creating a likable but flawed character, is the emotional connection. Letting your reader be able to say, okay, I can see why they're making these decisions. I can see what their viewpoint on this situation is. And that's why I really like it when there's multiple characters, because you can step into different characters essentially and see the same situation from different points of view. And no point of view is necessarily wrong, because there's the way people look at it. There's actually an exercise in therapy where they usually hold up a phone. I'll use a flash drive because it's what I have right now. We would hold it up and say, how many do you see? And most of the time people say, well, there's one. There is the one that I see, and then there's the one that every single one of you see, because your angle is just slightly different from mine. Or you may be looking at the other side of it, which is slightly different. See what I'm saying? So that's why I like multiple point of view. I like being able to connect emotionally with a character, and that's what makes me like a character. Even if I get angry at them at times, even if I get frustrated at what they do, I can understand why they're doing it. And I really think that understanding is the key point. So major kudos, Michele, because I love me Elizabeth. I love me Gregory too, don't get me wrong. I really love me Elizabeth. So I hope you guys found this video interesting. And as always, if you have suggestions or comments, feel free to leave them below. I will get to them as soon as I can. If you don't want to miss when I upload, make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you get notified every time a new video goes up. I normally do videos twice a week, once at the beginning of the week, once at the end of the week. This week, obviously, is a special week because we're celebrating. So that being said, I hope you guys stay safe, and until tomorrow, have a good one.